Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses, and this is Confucius, the Superior Man by Manly P. Hall, an article taken from The All-Seeing Eye, Volume 5, Number 8, May 1931. Confucius, the Superior Man. The philosopher K'ung, the perfect sage, the ancient and illustrious teacher, posthumously created Duke of Ney and the uncrowned Emperor of China, was born in the year BC 551 and died in his 78th year surrounded by his disciples. The circumstances surrounding the birth of K'ung, a word which was Latinized into Confucius, were most unusual. His father, having 9 daughters and but one crippled son, took to wife in his 70th year the 17-year-old daughter of the ancient and illustrious family of Yen. Confucius was born a year later, and his father died when he was but 3 years old. The young mother dedicated her life to the care and education of her child, and her continual guidance did much to mold the character of her extraordinary son. The coming of Confucius was announced by a curious vision. 5 ancient and mysterious sages appeared to the prospective mother as in a dream, leading in their midst a strange animal. This creature was about the size and shape of a small cow, some say a lion, but it was covered with scales like a dragon and carried a single short horn in the middle of its forehead. Only in ages when virtue and integrity flourished, and when some great enlightenment was to be conferred upon men, did this animal reveal itself. So the Chinese taught. The 5 sages spoke to the mother, declaring that a son would be born who would be wise beyond all mortals, that the child would grow up to become an unthroned king, and all his descendants would honor him as their most illustrious ancestor. The sages then bade the mother tie a piece of cloth to the horn of the sacred animal, which she did, and the vision disappeared. Though little is known concerning the boyhood of Confucius, from his earliest years, he is presumed to have exhibited extraordinary intellectual powers. Of a very serious and studious turn of mind, at an early age he interested himself in the political and sociological aspects of Chinese life. The unusual depth of his learning is attested by the account current in China that of all those who took the examinations of the classics, Confucius alone passed with a grade of 100%. Confucius was married at 19, in accordance with the custom of his time and race, but for some unknown reason separated from his wife, although in later years he referred to her in the highest terms. In his 22nd year, the young philosopher began his life work, and because of his rare gifts and great personal magnetism, soon drew around himself a considerable body of students and disciples. Up to his 52nd year, Confucius devoted himself principally to philosophy and music, after which time he entered into the responsibilities of public life. His political career, however, was a short and unhappy one, and disillusioned and discouraged, he gave up office and continued his wandering life to the end. A short time before the passing of the master, a huntsman slew in the forest a strange monster, the body of which he brought into the town to be exhibited to the amazed populace. It was a monster the size of a cow, covered with scales and armed with a single horn. Upon beholding it, Confucius declared that its death denoted his own passing. As it was the peculiar animal of wisdom, it also marked the close of a period of enlightenment. Feeling that his end was near, Confucius hastened to complete the commentaries he was writing upon certain of the ancient classical writings of the Chinese. At last, tired with life, and filled with not a little despair for the future of mankind, Confucius departed from this earthly existence in BC 478, his last words being, "No wise sovereign arises. There is none in the empire who will make me his master. My time has come to die." Confucius believed very definitely that he possessed knowledge sufficient to have reorganized the entire social structure of China. He felt that public recognition was due him, and that if placed in a position of sufficient authority, he could have remodeled the state and added greatly to the glory of both the emperor in heaven and his son upon the earth. Confucius was a contemporary of the great Chinese mystic Lao Tzu. The two men met and exchanged views, but Confucius, who appreciated life from a Socratic standpoint, admitted frankly that the higher ramifications of metaphysics were beyond him. Confucius felt himself called to the task of practical reconstruction of human standards of ethics. He dreamed of the golden age or ideal state, a day when all evil and dissension should pass away and truth should be supreme. Of this, it is written in the Confucian books. When the great principle prevails, the whole world becomes a republic. They elect men of talent, virtue, and ability. They talk about sincere agreement and cultivate universal peace. A competent provision is secured for the aged until their death, employment for the Middle Ages, and the means of growing up for the young. Each man has his own rights and each woman her individuality safeguarded. The Confucian dream of the New Age is perfectly consistent with the Platonic ideal of the rulership of the philosophic elect. The first step toward the achievement of this glorious state was the development of the superior man, namely one in whom the knowledge of virtue is perfected and who lives in harmony with that knowledge. We therefore find set forth in the Confucian writings those qualities which are necessary to the achievement of this desired state. So it is written that the superior man seeks in himself, whereas ordinary men seek in others for truth. The object of the superior man is truth, truth achieved through consistency with the highest standards of the common good and a strict application of the golden rule. Confucius further says, the practice of right living is deemed the highest practice. Confucius had a very interesting viewpoint upon the subject of divorce. There were several grounds upon which a man could obtain a divorce, prominent among which were jealousy of her husband and disobedience to her parents-in-law. On the other hand, the husband could not divorce his wife if she had no home to return to, or if she had mourned with him 3 years for his parents, or if he was poor when he married and afterwards accumulated riches and honor. He declared that it was quite common for men who had come into power and position to lack gratitude to those who had assisted him to reach this state, and hence he attempted in every way to establish justice. In affairs of the state, Confucius maintained that in all things the wise must rule and the unlearned obey. However, he also desired to universalize educational opportunities, so that ignorance would become a matter of choice rather than necessity. One of his disciples said that if he were made Prime Minister of China, he could ensure that country peace sufficient for 1,000 years by means of the Confucian Code. The master accepted the continuity of life after death, saying that the bones and flesh should return to earth is what is appointed, but the soul in its energy can go everywhere. He discouraged, however, intercourse between men and spirits, saying that it was an unrighteous act to weary the departed. The central thought of Confucianism may be summed up in the premise that the virtue of the present ensures the well-being of the future. Like Socrates, Confucius affirmed that if it is possible to cure the disease of irrationality with which men are afflicted, the permanence of all desirable conditions is assured. Nations, being but aggregates of individuals, express collectively those attitudes which persons express individually. Divine order reveals to those who are observing certain standards, rites, customs, and modes which have been established by divine decree in all the departments of nature. If men will heed the examples which the universe sets forth, they can bring into manifestation that perfection which exists everywhere as a potentiality. Even in his own day, Confucius was regarded as a man of very conservative views because he pleaded for the niceties of human relationship. He realized that the failure of little courtesies, small elegancies, and the beauties of human relationship presaged the end of civilization. He was a man of extremely simple tastes who disliked ostentation in every form, but delighted in little formalities which bespoke courtesy and grace. He affirmed that all major things are supported by minor things, and that it is the failure of little things which inevitably brings the great down in ruin. Today, Confucius would have been considered a very strict person, and many of his attitudes would be ridiculed. Yet, like Confucius, each of us must sometimes realize that the business of living is a somewhat serious matter, not a subject for pessimism or depression or for an attitude of assumed solemnity, but a business to which each individual must dedicate his thought and his time if he's to achieve a reasonable measure of success. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.